Howdy team, welcome back to another video on duck game computing. Been a minute, but today I'm finally addressing all my complaints in my previous videos about my big, complex, annoying, large designs. We'll start with some light theory. Don't worry, this won't drag on for too long. This right here is the circuit diagram for a NAND gate. As far as how this works, you can ignore the squiggly lines, the zigzags, those are just resistors. This triangle up here is a voltage supply. This icon down here is the drain, is the ground, or like a current drain. The way you can visualize this, if you know nothing about electronics, is water wants to flow from the voltage supply, from the supply down to the drain, flow straight down. Here we have our output to the NAND gate, and then these are our two inputs to the NAND gate. And then these icons here are transistors. So transistors are, or gates are, in water terms, you could call them a valve. So if a signal, if the input for this transistor turns on, then the valve opens and allows water to flow through. So a NAND gate means that it's a logic gate that is always outputting on unless both inputs are on. And we can visualize that here. So if either of these transistors, gates, valves are closed, you can imagine a flow of water coming from the source. The water is going to flow straight down, get blocked by one of these closed valves, and then get redirected to the output. The only situation where that doesn't happen is both gates are open, in which case the water will flow down straight to the drain, and it will not get redirected to the output. So what does this look like? Oh, well, why am I explaining this to you? I was very frustrated with my previous logic gate designs, and so I went to looking back at the basics to see if there's any way I could translate this into duck game. Fundamentally, from my understanding, a NAND gate is the basic building block in most digital circuitry. For example, from my last video, we could build a register out of 2 OR gates and 2 AND gates, or we could just do it out of 4 NAND gates. So if you're reusing the same structure over and over again, it makes design significantly less complex. So very easy just to start with an AND gate. There's also no overlapping wires or anything like that. So how does this look in duck game? How do we emulate this? Well, to start, we need a water flow, or a flow of items, some kind of thing to simulate current. The way I've set this up is with 2 teleporters and a box rapidly falling through them. So we got our supply up here, our drain down here. Box wants to fall straight down. Then we have our inputs here, these buttons, and they're connected to trapdoors, which we can treat as transistors. When the trapdoors are closed, the flow of boxes is stopped and redirected rather than just flowing straight to the drain. Only when both these transistors are open, the box will fall straight through. But if either of them is closed, the box will land and get redirected by this little water stream block here into this button, which is the output. So the output is on when this trapdoor here is open and this button is pressed. Demonstrate now what that looks like. Hello? Oh, I deleted the camera. There we go. So right now it's on. You see the block gets redirected. Only when I press both blocks when I press both inputs can the box free fall from the source to the drain. So this is the design spread out, very simple, very large. We can make this much smaller, but it's just for demonstration. So speaking of smaller, let's move on to the actual designs themselves. So here we go. This is my new NAND gate, and it is tiny in comparison to the previous designs. It is also very simple. There are a total of 4 wire blocks necessary to make this thing work. You got 1 for the 2 input buttons, and then 1 for each trapdoor. Technically, you'd have wires running out of the button, but that varies on what you're doing with the signals afterwards. We got our 2 teleporters, water stream here to redirect the block, and then very important is a block right here to just prevent some glitching when the box falls away from the output. So I can demonstrate that right now. So here, I'm not going to go through all of these in high detail, but here you can see this is an AND gate. As to the importance of that one wall block, let me just demonstrate real quick. So now if I turn on both inputs, you notice when I step onto the input button, the output flickers a little bit. It pulses shortly after the box falls away. So that's a bit of a glitch. We don't want that, and that's easily fixed by just putting a block here that pushes this wooden box over one tile and away from the output button. So that's our NAND gate. Very simply, we can invert the inputs by just opening or closing the trapdoors. This to create an OR gate. So I can demonstrate that over here. Just the OR gate is off until either of the buttons is pressed. Alternatively, if both pressed, it also works just fine. There's our OR gate. AND gates and NOR gates become slightly more tricky because we have to invert inverting the inputs is trivial, but we also have to invert the output. So up here, I have the AND gate with a inverter on the end of it, or the NAND gate with an inverter at the end of it. So you see here, so this block right here is the output. If I come back over here, press down both inputs, the output is on. Slightly more complicated, and the same works for the NOR gate. Now, on the note of inverters, we have our inverter design over here. As I'll get into in a little bit, this design is pretty obsolete, but yeah, you can just simplify it down to one trapdoor, and now you have an inverter. You can open that trapdoor, and now you have a repeater. But it's pretty space, size, and time efficient. Finally, we have our XOR gates and XOR gates. It's duck game. Duck game operates in an impulse space, so XOR and XOR gates are pretty trivial. See here, if I press both buttons, it turns off. So those are the logic gates. Now we got to start combining them into cool stuff. This is where things really start getting out of hand. So this right here is a latch. It is a NAND latch, so the state of the latch changes when one of the inputs is unpowered. So right here, if I remove this block, see the state of the latch changes. I remove this block, the state of the latch changes, so forth. And then we get to our register. So a register is just a latch with 2 extra NAND gates slapped around it to control some inputs. And so we have our output over here. This button right underneath me. We have our reset down here. And then we have our data. And then now that we've powered our data, we can clock it. And you see the output turns on. There's a bit of an issue with the reset. You see this this crate here that didn't get fed into the pipe. Pipes and item spawners can be a little bit finicky. I haven't quite figured out those glitches yet, but now it should have reset properly. There we go. Now the output's on. Now the output's off. Lock it on, and then go and reset. Should turn. Yep, there we go. So there's the register. And now that's all great, but I want to just take a moment to compare the size of these things to the previous designs. So let me go ahead and pull up my old compact. So first of all, here's my small latch from my previous video. But I think the point is better hammered home by my smaller my smaller register. We make a copy of that and bring it over here. Let's have a look at how the size compares. Yeah, it's like a fourth of the size. The same can be true for can be said for the latch. The latch itself is like a fourth of the size of my old latch design. I would like to note that this section here is just managing inputs to the register, so you can kind of ignore that when it comes to the actual size of the register itself. Yeah, so way smaller, way simpler. Another advantage of this design is that with some finagling with the 8x8 grid, where you can move blocks by half steps like this, you can connect up to 4 inputs to one of these logic gates. So this is a 4-input NAND gate. Only when I press all 4 buttons does the NAND gate turn off. Nearly 3 crates here. There you go. Yeah, so I'm a big fan of these designs, but size and complexity is one thing. It's also important to have an idea of how fast these things are. So I have built a map for some timing comparisons, specifically propagation time. That is the time it takes a signal to pass through each logic gate. So here we go. All right, so what we have here is on each of these contraptions, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have a single button that sends an input to 2 logic gates to be compared, and then an output cannon with a little lane behind it so we can visually see which one propagates the signal through first. So down here we are comparing our item mount-based inverter to our teleporter-based inverter. Here we're comparing a teleporter-based AND gate to our original item mount-based AND gate design. Here I'm comparing teleporter-based NAND gate to my improved item mount NAND gate design. And then here we're comparing a NAND gate to my to my item mount or gate based design, just inverted to turn it into a NAND gate. And then finally over here I'm comparing the registers. This button sends the signal through and then spits it out on those spawn cannons here. Let me make sure these are disabled because these are just make a lot of noise if they're not currently. These are just cannons set up to clock the systems at the same time. I'm just going to remove the cannons for now. Let me demonstrate some of these comparisons. So earlier I said the teleporter-based inverter was pretty obsolete, and you'll see that right here. I step on the button, the signal propagates way faster through the item mount-based design than the teleporter one. Much faster on the power, or it's a little bit closer on the power down, but the power off is very obviously different. And the reason this happens is that, so with the item mount based design, as soon as the button gets pressed, either a block spawns in the output spot or the mag blaster is shot almost instantly. Very little delay, just a little bit of wire travel time and bullet travel time. With the teleporter solution, when the output turns off, it's pretty fast. So the button is pressed, the trapdoor needs to open, and then the block needs to fall away. But as soon as the block starts falling, it hits this teleporter and immediately gets warped away from the button. The button turns off pretty quickly. The inverter output turning on is the slow part. So you can imagine the item crate is falling very quickly between the teleporters. The input button gets pressed. The signal arrives at the trapdoor closes. The item crate has to land and then slowly get pushed by the water stream with the button. Water streams are very fast. So that's the big time constraint with this design. And you'll see a similar kind of idea with a lot of these other comparisons here. So yeah, long story short, the item mount inverter is just cleanly the best way to go if I need a discrete inverter. Up here we have our AND gate comparison. So you can see powering it off, the AND gate with the item mounts is faster. Powering it on, they're roughly equivalent. The reason here there's a little bit of delay with the AND gate is because when you turn the output on, it takes a moment for the crate to fall from up here down to here. A crate from a standstill falling down one block does take a not insignificant amount of time. Here's the improved NAND gate versus here's the improved item mount NAND gate versus the teleporter NAND gate. As you can see, it's pretty similar on the power off, but on the power on, the item mount NAND gate is much faster. And then finally, here's the NAND gate, the teleporter based NAND gate compared to the item mount based OR gate. So we got to prime it and then see it's roughly even on the power down, but on the power on, in this case, it's pretty even for both of them. So here the problem is not only on the power on does the OR gate on the top have to wait for a block to fall, there's also a little bit of bullet travel time because it's not, the mag blaster isn't immediately smooching the output block. All right, so that's the logic gates. Now we move on to the big one. We expect to see, so this top item mount based register is built out of my improved item mount based NAND gate design. So what we'd expect to see is it's probably overall going to be faster than the teleporter design. At least on one case of powering on or powering off. So let me go ahead and add those spawn cannons back in. Now they're going to start clocking the registers. See there. Now timing this without breaking is a little tricky. There we go. Roughly even on the power on. And now we'll do the power off after this next cycle. There we go. And yeah, the NAND based, the item mount based register is noticeably faster when powering off. And powering on again, pretty similar. Powering off again. Yeah. So good to know the timings. Right now, I don't really care. The teleporter designs are much easier to work with so far. They also scale really well with lag. I had an old design I can show you here. I should turn down my volume. Okay, my volume's already decently low. I had an old design that went with trampolines. First of all, it created a lot of noise. Second of all, these are not exactly lag friendly when you scale up a bunch of them. But with the teleporter design, I've covered the entire screen with a bunch of separate NAND gates and noticed no real drop in performance. That's about it for now. Next video, I have a funny little contraption to show, but past that point, that's all the material I had prepared before I started making these videos. So past that point, we have to start making new stuff. So probably going to be a minute after the next video for anything to come out in the future, but yeah, we're going to keep chugging along. The information's out there for people to play with it. If you want to mess around with these designs yourself, there's a link to the maps in the description. That's about it. I'll see you guys around.